Hey guys, this is part B about customer service, and if you haven't watched the first video that I sent out, I'd rather you watch that one first and then watch this one. I am going to talk to you just real briefly about customer service and how it applies to what we specifically do within LHC. So watch the one of my husband talking, if you don't mind, watch that first. I'm sitting outside, so hopefully the distractions of airplanes and kids playing basketball and stuff don't distract you too much. It's just a beautiful day here in Auburn. So I want to talk about customer service, and I want to bring up a couple of things that are kind of less specific, but just general. I was in church today at Church of the Highlands. That's where we go to church, and it was all about basically living out your purpose, which is something that's very important to me. And one of the verses that was brought up was Ephesians 2:10, that basically says that we have good works that have been created in advance for us to do, and our purpose is to do those good works. And I think that really kind of dovetails with what we're going to be talking about in terms of customer service. Another thing that was talked about was a quote by Albert Schweitzer, I think was his last name, and it basically said that, the purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. And so I think part of customer service is doing exactly that, is basically living out that purpose, which is to serve and show compassion. I've made a list of things I want to go over in terms of what customer service could look like. And one of the reasons I did this is because this is something I've been working on personally for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I was really challenged when I heard about how good of a job Samilia does down in the Enterprise and Dothan area. I think she's Enterprise in Troy. But anyway, she offers a level of customer service that honestly, when I heard it, it kind of overwhelmed me. I thought there's no way I could ever do that. But she does more sales and has more Medicare referrals a month than I think anybody in the coastal division. And she's in these little bitty tiny towns. And so I think it really is valuable to maybe reach out to Samilia and ask her kind of, how did you implement this and how did you get into it? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to ask for her to resend me her document so I can send it to you. But anyway, having said that, it made me think about, how do I do customer service and do I do it well? And the other thing it made me think about is I listened to, of course, a podcast on customer service. And one of the things it said was that it's so much easier to keep a customer than it is to gain a new one. But so often we allow the relationship with the customer that we currently have to become stale. And in our environment where we call on the same practices and we're not necessarily coming in most of the time with new information, we're basically, have the same information over and over again. If we're not careful, then that relationship will become stale. And so I wanted to personally look at, what am I doing that could keep that from happening and keeping things fresh. And so anyway, some of the things that I have written down just to encourage you guys with, and some of this is just very basic. Are you listening to your customer? Are you going in and just talking, going in and acting like you're doing them a favor when you bring them a snack or coffee or Krispy Kreme or whatever it is? Are you actually listening to them and finding out what's going on in that environment? On the video that you saw from Dave, he talked about being a welcome guest. And what he meant by that is sometimes we can get very comfortable in an office and you feel like it's okay just to kind of walk in. You don't even have to stop at the front desk. And those are the best kind of offices to be in. But you need to always remember that you're a guest there. I don't know if I grew up in a neighborhood where I didn't have to knock on my neighbor's door. If I wanted to go over there and see them for whatever reason, I could just walk on in. But there were times that was inappropriate. And I learned at a young age that it still was okay to knock on the door, that they may be in their pajamas. Or one time I walked into my neighbor's house and they were in the middle of an argument, and it was very just uncomfortable for everybody, as I was kind of asked very nicely to leave. So you don't know necessarily what's going on in that office or that practice unless you can, kind of ask, how are things going today? Is it okay if I come on back? Don't just assume that that's okay. Know the expectations of you. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I'm thinking of one practice in particular that I have. I don't have to stop at the front. If I do, they almost think there's something wrong. I can go on to the back. But the expectation when I get back there is to get in and out, to not be in their way. They are very, very, very busy. And so if I've got something to say, I better say it and get out of there. So know the expectations that are on you, and adhere to those. Make sure that you go in, and part of your perspective is let them know that you want to be an extension of their care. Okay, don't go in there acting like you're doing them a favor. I mean, really, what we're doing is trying to be an extension of who they are, and the best way to do that is to ask questions and just make sure that you're aware of how you can do that. Key to good customer service is to be knowledgeable. And what I mean by this is, if you have ever gone, I don't know, one of the things that comes to mind is if you're on a diet and you want to know if a certain thing that you're about to eat at a restaurant or maybe a friend's house or whatever has sugar in it, for example, and you ask and they don't know, it doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence in being able to eat and enjoy that food if you don't know what's in it. So we need to be knowledgeable. You know, what is it that we can offer? What do we do for COPD patients? I didn't know that recently. I had to reach out to Kayla because she has a respiratory background, and she was able to really educate me on some of the things that we can do. And we need to be knowledgeable. You know, what is our falls risk program? What does our low vision program look like? Don't just walk in and talk about programs that you don't know anything about. We have resources for you to be able to read about them, so make sure that you are knowledgeable. We've also always talked about making it easy. How can we give them the easy button? And we talk about this a lot, but so does every other rep. So what does it look like for you? I will tell you that it doesn't look the same to everybody. And what I mean by that is there's some offices that it actually is such a disruption for you to come by and pick up the referral that they would much rather fax it. And so for you to come in and say, you know, here's my rapid referral form. If you'll fill them out, I'll come by and pick them up. Well, that just made their job harder because they do all their referrals online. So make sure that you know how you can make this easier. I'll give you an example of something that happened this week. I call on cardiologists every Friday that when I go in, I'm very, very grateful for this, but the office manager will actually print out for me patients who have discharged in the last 2 weeks. They have to come in for a follow-up visit 2 weeks after they've been in the hospital. I will give that list to the nurse practitioner or sometimes to the physician, and they will look and see if any of those people need home health. And I can walk out of there this past week, walked out with 4 Medicare referrals on Friday afternoon. It was wonderful. But when I was there, the nurse that prints out everything for me was so stressed out. She was trying to get out. She was supposed to be picking up her grandkids. So for me to walk in and have 4 referrals, well, happy day for me, but it was not so much a happy day for her. And what I found out is because these patients have been in the hospital recently, that I could actually take the H&P from the hospital and have that printed out instead of her doing that. All I needed was the demographic sheet. I already had the referral signed by the physician, so for her to do that was very quick and easy. But it caused me to have an extra step. I actually had to call the hospital. We have a CTC there, so I was very fortunate. This may not be something y'all could do, but I was able to call her and say, hey, can you print out the H&Ps, print out the discharge summaries? They were just there within the last 2 weeks. We could use that as our face-to-face, and it was perfect. But it also helped her. She didn't have to print stuff out. So again, figure out how to make things easy. How are you thanking your referral source? If you listen to the video of Dave, I think what he said was critical. Don't necessarily say thank you so much for the referral or thank you for your business. But if you're going to send a thank you note, being able to say thank you for the confidence that you have in our service and choosing us to be an extension of your care would be extremely appropriate. We're saying something like, thank you so much for allowing us to be an extension of your care. Is just so much better than thank you so much for the business. And hopefully you will see that. So let's talk real quick. How are you thanking your referral sources? Some of you will take in a goodie, and I think that's very fun, but you don't want to seem like you're buying their referral, so I also want to warn you to be careful with that. I think notes are personable, and whether you send it through a text, whether you send it through an email, whether you send it over the fax, I keep note cards in my car. I like to personally thank people and be sincere with that. So I was just going to say, writing a note, I think is exceptional. And I will tell you this, like, I think that if you could get to a point where you acknowledge every single referral, whether it's a note, it could be something that you just print out and are able to drop off. Thank you so much for allowing us to serve you and serve your patient. We have picked up Miss Smith and anticipate seeing her admitted in the next 2 days. Whatever it is. I think it's very valuable to figure out some way to acknowledge that referral. And that's what I'm going to have Samelia send back out to us, is what is her process, because she actually puts people on her calendar. She uses her calendar on her phone. A lot of us don't do that. She uses her calendar. She puts the person on her phone. She puts that same name on her phone calendar maybe a week later so she can check to make sure they were admitted. And then she tells the doctor, kind of how they're doing. And when you think that we might get 2, maybe 3 referrals a day, this isn't really a lot. Okay, it sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about 2 to 3 people, we're not talking about a ton of time here. Okay, another way that you can offer customer service is doing things on the front end that will help your staff, as well as provide customer service for the physician and the patient. So the first thing you can do is actually call the patient. Call them when you get the referral, say that Dr. So-and-so would like for us to come out and do home health. Educate them a little bit on the front end, and this is key. Make sure you have the correct address and phone number, because like Terry has talked about, we don't want anybody to have unable to locate as a reason that you have a non-admit. And you can prevent that from happening on the front end if you'll just call and speak with the patient ahead of time. I do that for all of my patients. I know Samelia does that for all of hers. So just make sure. And sometimes that's an uncomfortable thing to do, but it definitely helps, okay? How you can use case conference. I'm sorry, just look at my notes. At case conference, if you will sit there, and if not, you can ask the team leaders to give you this information where they can kind of give you an update on maybe patients that you have on your calendar that you can go back and talk to the physicians about, or patients that have discharged. So then you could go into the doctor's office and say, hey, so-and-so met all of our goals, or so-and-so has not been compliant, so we're having to discharge them. Whatever the case may be, just having that personal touch where you can get that information back to the physician or to the MA or to the nurse, I will tell you, will set you apart. So once again, what we're learning is a key differentiator in what we do has to do with customer service. And if you've ever looked at things like Chick-fil-A, or being able to go to a nice hotel that has exceptional customer service, it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference. So, I sit there and I look at Chick-fil-A, my gosh, we know the quality of service that we're going to get is going to be the same whether we are in Auburn, Alabama, or New York City. It is their pleasure to serve us. They get it done quickly. The food is consistently good. It is rare to have a bad experience, but if you've ever had a bad experience somewhere, whether it's purchasing an item or going to a doctor's office that the staff was just not friendly, you know what that's like. And so keep that in mind, that you want to be the Chick-fil-A of home health services and not the Burger King. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever eaten at Burger King, what a nightmare that is. Moving on, just the last thought, I guess, is how can you provide customer service within your office? Sometimes it is so stressful back there. If y'all were to sit all day and listen to what your staff is having to do in that office, you can understand why that can be miserable. Can you maybe every now and then surprise them with when you bring your referrals in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you want them put in before you get on the phone with Terry, provide a chocolate bar or a coffee when you bring it in. Believe it or not, you can do that. You can't do it every day, but you can do that every now and then as as an office appreciation. And I can tell you how to write that up on your expense report. Another thing that I do in our case conference is I always ask ahead of time, is there anybody that really stood out maybe in one of the what do you call it, the surveys that are done, that we got some good feedback on a physical therapist or a nurse or something like that. And I try to acknowledge them. Very simple. Sometimes if it's a big deal, I might do something up to $10, but most of the time it's something real simple, like a chocolate bar that says, thank you. Or maybe some soap or a candle. I mean, I've even bought a beer and a snack for one of our PTs that's, said, hey, drink this when you get home, and thanks so much for what you're doing. What can you do? And to just provide maybe some levity, to provide some appreciation within your office. That can go a long way, guys, to make a difference there. So, again, long video, sorry, but hopefully you'll learn something about customer service and how you can make a difference every day by fulfilling the purpose that I believe you are called to do. Have a good one.